was catching up with some girlfriends recently, and I was telling them that I have just reached my 1-year anniversary of full-time financial counselling. Yes, thank you. And one of them turns to me and she says, "Oh, what's your favourite thing about it?" I said, I think it would have to be making people cry. And there was like a bit of an awkward pause where they waited for me to tell them that I was joking, but I wasn't. Stunned silence. Possibly someone was thinking about making a formal complaint. But my 1-year anniversary at work really had me thinking about why I do what I do. How someone who worked in construction for 5 years could fall so in love with community services. I'm very passionate about two things, superannuation and shame. And let me tell you right now, if you are looking to lose friends and alienate people at dinner parties, it's an unbeatable combination. We might skip superannuation for today. I can actually see some eyes glazing over in the front. But shame. Shame has been the most fascinating experience over the last 12 months. And I don't mean that in a flippant way at all. I would argue that addressing shame is a cornerstone of financial counselling, because it's a universal experience. If I asked you what you were most ashamed of, would you have to think about it? I wouldn't. So what we're going to do, I'm going to pick a few people out of the audience, and no, I'm only joking. Had you for a second though, didn't I? Yeah. I'll go first. I've got a few things that I'm ashamed of. I was fired once. I have been the victim of assault and been too ashamed to tell anyone. But the most shame that I carry is that from my eating disorder. So I have been in recovery from an eating disorder for over 2 years now, more than 700 days. It's a long time. And of those 700 days, there has not been one where I have not felt shame about it. Not a single one. Of course, there's the shame of what I did, lying about eating, hiding the throwing up, being evasive when anyone asked me anything to do with food, really. In fact, if my eating disorder was a financial counselling client, do you know what she'd be like? She'd be defensive about her debts, she'd hide things from her statement of position, and she'd be evasive about co-occurring issues. Does that sound familiar? But what I'm the most ashamed of is that I had to ask for help. That I couldn't fix it by myself. And that every single day, I'm tempted to go back to those behaviours. For those of us who've experienced shame like that, it's profoundly exhausting. I often wonder what I would have been able to achieve if I hadn't been so impacted by shame. If shame had been something that was avoided rather than something that I just have to manage for the rest of my life. And we see it all the time in our clients, right? They're so ashamed of what has happened to them, even if it's not their fault, especially if it's not their fault, actually. They are so ashamed to ask for help, and they are exhausted by that shame. Talking about it helps, normalising it helps, but for many people, that shame will never go away. And that's why I love when a client can cry in my office. Crying in financial counselling is not a failure. It's an acknowledgement of the weight of shame that has been carried, and for some, it can be the start of the healing process. So what would our clients' lives look like if they weren't so affected by shame? Shame of being a financial failure, or letting the situation get so bad that the options are so few. What would their relationships look like? What would their health look like? What would their capacity to make sound decisions look like? And if there is a difference, how can we measure it? That's been a year of shame. So what does the next 5, 10, 20 years look like for shame and financial counselling? How can we get people in front of us before shame takes a hold? And when it has, how can we save shame a seat at the table, call it out, and help our clients start to heal? I look forward to finding out. Thank you.